Okay. You mentioned Starfield. What is Starfield? And what's the origin story of this game?
We had always wanted to do something where you explore space, the explore space role-playing game. So take the kind of games that we make and give it a little bit of a different spin. And, the other games that I loved, there was a pen and paper RPG I loved, Traveler. It was one of the first games I made for the Apple II. I never finished it, right? I'm just doing it on my own. And I love this game. Starflight was one. Star Control 2 was a game that I loved. Sundog was a big one in the Apple II days that a lot of people don't know that I loved. And so a lot of us in the studio felt it was time to do something new. We're going between Elder Scrolls and Fallout and going back and forth. And we love that. But hey, we've always wanted to do this explore the galaxy science fiction game. Now is the time to do that.
And that's a brave move. So Fallout is post-apocalyptic on a single planet.
Mm-hmm.
Elder Scrolls series is on a single planet. So this is going out into the open world of many star systems, many planets. I saw that it's thinking about 100 star systems and 1,000 planets available to explore. What is that world of stars and planets like?
Well, you mentioned Daggerfall. We go back to some of that. Well, the first when we did it was, how are we going to render a planet, like pull it off for the player? Like, can we? Or do we have to sort of do it where you can't land on all of them, where you're landing in a very controlled, small world space that we, kind of craft, and you would have a very limited set of those.
Mm-hmm.
You go back to tone, like, well, that's probably the wrong tone. And how can we say yes? Like, I want to land on that ice ball. So we started the game right after Fallout 4, so 2016. And the first thing we did was, how can we have a system to generate these planets and make them look, I'll say reasonable, as opposed to, fractally goop.
What's the technical definition of goop? Fractally goop.
Fractally goop. You've probably seen a lot of like simulations, whether they're space things or landscape things, where they're using fractals and just the landscape does not look real. It just is like highs and lows and it's muddy. And so we did find a way. We came up with a way, had prototyped of building tiles, like large tiles of landscape, the way we would usually build them. We kind of generate them offline, hand do some things, and end up with these very realistic looking tiles of landscape, and then built a system that wraps those around a planet and blends them all together. And we had pretty successful results with that. And so we thought, yeah, we could do this. And so there was a big design kind of problem to solve in terms of, well, what's fun about landing on a planet where there's potentially nothing? Because there's a lot of planets and moons, if you kind of, right, in reality, that, well, there's nothing on them except resources. And so we spent a lot of time figuring out, okay, let's just lean in on that can be a lonely experience, as long as we tell the player, here's what's there, here are the resources that are there, go find them. But I equate it to that moment of, we said about listening to the wind go and watching the sunset. And I do think there's a certain beauty to landing on a strange planet, being somewhat the only person there, building an outpost. And we are modeling all of the systems, because that's how we like to do things. So you can watch whatever that gas giant or moon, it will rotate and go, and sunrise, sunset, and all of those things that you would expect. And it's all really happening. And most people probably won't notice or appreciate all of that, but I think it gives them the ability to say, I want to go do that and see that on that place, as long as we tell them, hey, the quest leads over here. Here's where the handcrafted content is that you would expect. And then here's more of the open procedural planet experience.
So you're
Long answer. I don't know if I answered your question.
there's no
All
the
right.
questions are stupid and the answers are brilliant. So that's how this works. So this is the world's most immense simulator of the human condition of loneliness. Because I can't imagine a more lonely experience.
I mean, you put it that way. I don't
just
know
go-
that was the goal, but
just on a planet alone. That must be. I mean, a deep embodiment of what loneliness is like. I mean, it's the both the awe and like when you hike alone.
Mm.
There's a deep loneliness to that. It's like it's humbling that this thing will last much longer than you. It's been here way before you.
Is it the line from the moon landing? Beautiful desolation. It's Buzz Aldrin, is it?
Beautiful desolation. Is that what he said?
I think so.
Beautiful desolation. Well,
something like that.
But that's just words. There's a feeling to it, and you want that feeling to be real. You're just here. There's some resources here. I just feel like it'll hit people at a certain moment, like it does for me with Skyrim. Like, holy shit, I'm here alone, and whatever cruel nature that's out there doesn't really care about me.
Exactly.
That's the experience. So you want to create the whole planet, and you want to have many of them.
We do have many, but once you build that system, I think the numbers become, I mean, honestly, a little bit. We wrap it in so we can name them all and have a finite set, even though it's a very, very large number, but a set that we can, validate and know about, even though it's a huge number. But once you're building a system that can build a planet, I mean, a planet is sort of infinite space. We go back to the Daggerfall analogy, right? If you have systems to build that much space, doing 100 planets or 1,000 or 10,000 or 1,000,000 planets is not. It's just you just change the number and press the button. But you can't name them all. You can't control, like, when you're getting in really big numbers. Hey, what does this system way out here feel like if you take your ship and jump that far? We do level the systems. When you go to system, you'll see, oh, this is like a level 40 system. And us being able to at least control that scale is how we kind of ended up with the 100-ish systems we have.
What are the levelings? What do you mean by level? We level.
It would be like when you look at a map in a game, it says this is the area for low level players. This is level 1.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. So we do that on a system basis. Star system.
I read that space travel is considered dangerous in this game. Can you explain?
That goes back to a tone thing, right? When you actually play the game, because it's a game, like, we don't really kill you when you fly out in space. But it has a tone of there's some effort involved. And we've dialed it back as we've been making the game, whereas we used to run out of fuel. You jump and get stranded, which on paper was it's a great moment when you get stranded. You have to press this beacon and you don't know who's going to come. Mm-hmm. Turns out that's not like, it just stops your game. We found you'd be playing the game and I ran out of fuel. Okay, I guess I'll just wander these planets trying to mine for fuel so I can get back to what I was doing. Mm-hmm. It just, it's a fun killer.
That's too realistic of a simulation of the human condition.
Yeah, and the idea was, well, it's very, games do that. If you had like a hardcore, you're right, a hardcore survival mode, that's the kind of thing you would do. Maybe we'll do it in the future. But it's more of like a tone, how they build their ships. Do they have all the right things for safety? We do get into environmental things on the planets, in your spacesuit. Obviously, there are a lot of different spacesuits and buffs for, the gases or the toxicity or the temperature on various planets.
Are there robots?
Yes.
Those companions, are they robots by chance? Can you
One of the companions, the robot Vasco, yeah.
Okay, so they have a name and a personality and so on. And
Vasco does, and then there's a whole bunch of, I call them generic robots. We use them for utility. People, we actually dialed them back because if you think about, well, you know a lot about this more than me in terms of.
I'm offended right now. You calling robots generic and
no. The ones we use, the ones we use, we made them more generic. We didn't.
Sorry,
we didn't.
I'm very sensitive about this.
I understand. If you were to chart the future, you would say robots would have a much bigger role in our future than we are presenting. But that was a tone thing. So most of our robots are there as utility robots, and there are some combat ones as well as enemies.
So it's a deeply human world.
Very much, yes.
In terms of
Yes.
tone. So have you talked to Elon about this game?
A little bit.
How much of reality, like the work of SpaceX, is an inspiration for the decisions made in this game?
I wouldn't say it's for the decisions we made, but visiting SpaceX and walking in there, it's like the Avengers meets NASA. It's like the most amazing. And here we're building the next gen, like see the Dragon stuff before it was, other people saw it. Like I was really in awe. This giant machine that looks for imperfections on the surface of these giant, fuselage. I just, whenever, and because, we're in DC, go to the Air and Space Museum a lot. And so whenever I look at those kind of things, or, you'll visit the space shuttle, sort of overcome with how big it is. And I go stand back by the engines and think about that thing leaving orbit. And one of the things that Elon really impresses, like, we're reaching the edge of physics on a lot of this stuff, where how hard it is to leave orbit, the gravitational pull. And like, so the engineering that has gone into that, our space program, what he's doing now, I just marvel at. I don't understand, right? I'm not at that level, but I marvel at the kind of human ingenuity and scale. I was on the Delaware coast last month, and I was outside for some reason. It was dark, and I saw this crazy light in the sky. And I thought it was like a helicopter, and then it didn't go away. And I'm like, what is that? And I called with some friends, hey, does everybody see this? What is that? And we just stood dumbfounded looking at this thing in the sky. And like, that is a UFO. Nobody takes their phone out. Everyone, I'm with like 4 people. Mm-hmm. Everyone is too dumbstruck. You would think, why don't you take a picture of this thing? And the next day we found out, it was in the news, it was the SpaceX launch in Florida. And I'm seeing it from Delaware, Maryland area. Yeah. It was it was incredible. It's just that I am in complete awe of.
Is there some aspect of that you can replicate, the majestic nature of that in a video game?
I wish I had the answer to that. I think some of it we're doing when you're standing on a planet and you see the other moons go by, and then you realize I could get in my ship, blast off, and land there and build myself a home. I think that's pretty cool. There's a minor thing we do, which is we have other ships come and go from the starports when you're there. So you'll be in a city, and then you hear this, and you hear the engine. You look up, and a ship is taking off or coming out. Like,
that's great.
There's nothing for you to do, but I think it's awesome.
Yeah. So then that's all about creating the soundscape, the feel,
seeing it, and like, oh, that's real. That's a ship that. Or you jump into a system and you see these freighters, and sometimes they contact you. Like, it's not all just like jump in and combat.
Do you ever think about the fact that science fiction seems to make it has a way of creating reality, not just kind of predicting it or imagining it? It's almost like the thing you put out there with a video game like this, like Starfield, that you kind of anticipate. It kind of fuels people's imagination of what is possible.
Maybe, I don't know. I can't say. You're making me think now about other science fiction. That movie I love, Minority Report. It's more of like not a space movie, but more like looking at the future. Mm-hmm. If you look at a lot of the things in that movie, it's almost like, I think those are coming true.
Yeah. I mean, is that the one that you do interface this like?
It's the interfaces, and then the way he looks at his child's more like a holographic, almost AR, VR kind of thing, or digital billboards, or trying to predict human behavior. There's just a lot of future stuff in that movie. As it comes to sci-fi, to your other question, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I think it does, and it's interesting. I mean, I suppose you're trying to create the most realistic, sticking to the tone, the most immersive, realistic world, and almost by accident, you create the thing that is possible because you want it to be realistic in some deep sense. So accidentally, it can become the possible, and then that places that idea in people's heads. I mean, if humans are ever to become a multiplanetary species, we need to play games. We need to read sci-fi to help imagine that that's possible. To look outside of Earth, to look up on the stars, and then we can actually travel out there. I don't know. There's power to sci-fi to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you shouldn't feel the pressure of that.
I don't know if I'd make the leap now. That's all. That what we're doing might. Now, maybe, one of our, hopefully it might inspire some young people who are headed in that direction of like, oh, I thought about getting into space and space exploration and being an engineer or doing these things. And I played this game and, it really sparked that interest in me. So I'm going to go take that as a field. And maybe that's the person who goes and does some of these things.
Yeah, because in the next couple of decades, likely a human being will step foot on Mars, which are the first steps towards us becoming multi-planetary.
And then if you read some of the stuff they're doing with the James Webb Telescope and them being able to look for signs of life on other planets, it's quite fascinating. And, recent stuff I read say they think in 20 years they will. So it's actually quite encouraging to think. It's almost a dream of mine, like in our lifetimes, that we discover life on another planet.
Yeah, especially if it's intelligent life. I've been talking to a lot of biologists and a lot of folks. I imagine there's life everywhere out there.
The numbers would say so, yes.
The challenging question is what it looks like and how much of it is intelligent. So a lot of biologists tell me the big difficult leap is from the prokaryotes to the eukaryotes. So like the complex life. It could be that a lot of our universe is just filled with bacteria.
Well, I believe, if I'm understanding it right, that there's two ways they're going to look at planets. When they can look at, they can read, hey, this planet has this kind of gas. Mm-hmm. They can now look at the ones that are created by potential life forms, and then the ones that are created, the byproducts of industry. Mm-hmm. So there's only certain ones that are created if you have a society there. And that they can start looking on these types of star systems and these planets. But it takes a lot of time because you have to book time on that telescope. You have to look at that planet over a long period of time. But in theory, given enough time, given the amount of space out there, we would find one.
That would be a cool thing in this short life of ours to find out definitively that there is an industrial, intelligent civilization out there before you contact them. So die, end your life, not knowing the rest of the story, but just know that it's out there. That's
right.
a cool. And then if you have kids, be like, well, this one's on you. F this, I'm out.
And I'm fascinated by what it would do to the way, I think in a positive way, the way humanity thinks about itself here. No, there is definitively other life out there.
I mean, both things. If there isn't life out there, that's also a huge responsibility. Both are super exciting. If we're alone, it's super exciting because there's a responsibility to preserve whatever special thing we have going on here. This, whether you call it the flame of consciousness or whether it's consciousness or intelligence, that's the special thing. Preserve it, have it expand. But if there's others out there, I mean, that sparks that drive for exploration, of reaching out into the stars and meeting them. Most of them probably want to kill us. So, but luckily we have the military industrial complex on Earth that builds bigger and better weapons all the time.
We have Space Force.
Space Force.
Right.
It will both protect us and destroy all our enemies. This is 100% a video game we're living in.